One Constructicon chemist. And we also got a surprise for you on this video, viewers, so make sure you watch. So what you got in the drum? Chemicals of TNT? Concrete? How about a chocolate malt? Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here. And this month we're going to take a look at some G1 versions of toys we've got coming up this year. Now, many of you may or may not have heard, but apparently this year will be the final year that Hasbro will release Studio Series 86 figures. So after this year, we will no longer get toys done up to resemble the characters from the 86 animated film. But on a positive note, we will be getting a cartoon-accurate Devastator. So the Constructicons will be back. So for part of this month, we're going to take a look at them, at some of their G1 forms. And right here, we have Mixmaster. Mixmaster, like the other Constructicons, were released in 1985. They would also be available in 1986, especially due to the popularity of the Constructicons, as they were the most prominent of the toy combiners that were featured in the cartoon, since they did appear in several episodes of the second and some of the third season of the cartoon. And of course, they made a couple of prominent appearances in the 86 film, being used to man a good-sized assault on Autobot City, and as well as merging into Devastator inside Astro Train to squabble over leadership. Now, Mixmaster is a special one to me because he was the first Constructicon I got as a child. So yes, this guy is really from 1985. And he certainly looks his age. Sort of like I do, but hey, that's another story. At the time that he was released, the Constructicons all came with the various component parts that would be used for the building of Devastator. A practice that would be done again in 1990 with 1989 when they released Monstructor. All the other subsequent combiners, no, wait a minute, they did do it again in 86 for Predaking, due to the fact that all the Predacons were the same size. Just like the Pretender monsters and the Constructicons, all the figures were the same size. So they all came with a component piece. Mixmaster included Devastator's gun. All the others, since they relied on 4 small guys and 1 big guy, the big guy came with all the component parts, and the small guys could all be interchanged. Now, as Larry also mentioned, we do have a surprise to go along with this video, because not only do I have the Generation 1 Mixmaster, I have the early Generation 2 Mixmaster. I call him the early Generation 2 due to the fact there was a second Devastator released in the Generation 2 lineup. That one was an exclusive to KB Toys. And that version was done up in orange, whereas the standard retail release was in yellow. So we'll definitely take a look and do a slight comparison of the two toys as we go through this review. Mixmaster here, he would be sold on a card at retail, but he also appeared in a gift set. They did do a gift set for Devastator, which came with a unique set of instructions because they went with a different style for future ones. And the box only included a tech spec for Devastator. I have not found any evidence that it had the tech specs, full tech specs for the other Constructicons. But most of their stuff was also printed on the instruction manual. Alright, let's take a look at Mixmaster and his accessories. We'll start with his weapon, which the package cards refer to as a laser pistol. So it's just a generic pistol in unto itself. Nothing too fancy about it. And then right here is the Generation 2 laser pistol. And they are both exactly the same. They are even the same color. So you could swap them out if necessary. Then next we'll take a look at Devastator's weapon, which the card contents lists it as a Magna Laser. And I do like the Magna Laser a little bit more. It's a little too big for Mixmaster to carry, but it's still an impressive looking gun. Now, of course, to compare it with the Generation 2 one, and the mold is the same, but the Generation 2 one is in a lighter purple color, whereas the Generation 1 is in a dark purple color. So not as easy to change out. And then lastly, well, not quite lastly, we have the Twin Blaster. It is done up in a chrome bit. And as you just saw there, it does launch from his head. This one is surprisingly isn't as neutered as many of the ones that came out the year before, so well, it's somewhat neutered because I would expect it should fly a little further than that, but at least the spring still works on mine after 40 years. Now I want to hold it like this so you can see the whole thing, because this is the Generation 2 version, and as you can see, it is somewhat shorter than the Generation 1 version. And we'll cover that here in a moment as to why that is, when I compare the two figures side by side. Lastly, Generation 1 also included a second Twin Blaster, although this one, since it's only a single barrel, I guess it should be called a single blaster. They just list them both together on the card contents, because they were both attached to the same plastic tree. And it would basically serve as a second weapon, since basically you fired off the one, well then now you got another one, and fire! Not too shabby. Now, of course, we'll take the time here to compare the Generation 1 and Generation 2 molds. As you can see, they are pretty much the same. My G2 one has more stickers. For some reason, my parents didn't let us put the stickers on the Generation 1 versions. Don't know why. Don't really care why either. After all these years, they won't know it any more than I would. Now, it's said that Hasbro had the Constructicons done up in the purple and bright green to make them stand out. And by golly, they do stand out because that's how we remember them. But the biggest change that I want you to see is right here on the left side of his head, or the cranial unit on top. As you can see here, the Generation 1 version does have a lever, and that's for firing off the blasters. That is not present on the Generation 2 version. You can probably see through the light coming in the back that it's entirely hollow in here on the Generation 2. There is no launching mechanism in the Generation 2. Hence, that's why he's got the smaller blaster. It doesn't need to press against a spring. But consequently, it's also a lot harder to get this inside on him. Takes a little bit of effort. But of course, then again, this guy hasn't seen much of the light of day since 1992. 'Cause yeah, I bought this guy in 92. Partially to see how well they look together. How well the two Devastators look side by side. I know I still got all of mine. I'll have to see if my brother has his laying around too. Because I hope when we go through all of these at some point that I can show you a complete G1 and G2 Devastator. That should definitely be something for you all to enjoy. Okay, transforming Mixmaster is a simple affair. You straighten his arms out and then press them inside. And you come down here to his feet. Well, first we got to look at his articulation, and that isn't much. Because basically you just rotate his arms at the shoulder. G1 days, that was all we got. I mean, we can bend his legs at the knees, but they're not built to hold him like that. Now, for transforming. Again, put the arms down the sides and push them in. Then we come down here to his legs and rotate it up and around. And there we go. He is in his alternate form, which is supposedly a Volvo F12 cement mixer. Although some say he looks more like a Nissan diesel, which would be apparently about to the same scale as the other vehicles. And of course, in this mode, you can also turn the cement drum. And how well does he roll? Rolls okay for a 40-year-old toy. But you also had an attack mode option to go with the Mixmaster. You could plug his laser gun right there above the cab, and then back here near the drum, you can attach Devastator's cannon. You know, adding a few other accessories to this, and he wouldn't look too out of place in a Mad Max film, to be honest with you. And of course, for comparison's sake, here's how the Generation 2 one looks, with all his weapons on there. And of course, one other thing I'd like to point out about the Generation 2 was the stylized logos that they hit on them. And right here, they've got it on Mixmaster's feet, or behind the cab. As you can see, they went with a stylized Decepticon logo and purple lettering to say he's a Decepticon. Kinda silly, if you ask me. I really didn't find the change to the symbol all that great. But all in all, as you can see, they are pretty much the same. One's just significantly older than the other. And I wouldn't trade him any other way. Now let's take a look at his file card, because I do have the file card for him. Unfortunately, it's most of the way torn up on here. This isn't the original file card mine came on, because we always cut the tech specs off of them. This is one I've bought as an adult collector. As we can see, when they came out, they originally retailed for $5.99. This one was apparently a holdover into '86, and he was marked down to $4. Turn it around to the back side. Since there's so much to show for the Constructicons, they don't have the mural. Up here is the barcode, and next to it is the robot points. He was worth 1 point. Then we get a whole thing to show off Devastator and all the Constructicons. Mixmaster was apparently number 6 in the line, and you can see here on the prototype figure, they painted the cement drum, mixing drum, gray. Whereas on the final product, it is green. I think I'm kind of mixed on the gray. I mean, I don't think it really would have looked all that good on all this green and purple, but an extra splash of color might have been nice. And of course we get some artwork here of Mixmaster. Here's the contents of the toy, the laser pistol, the magna laser, and the twin blasters together. Then we go through 2 steps on how to turn the cement truck into an attack truck. So he would start by putting in the handgun and then the big gun, because he was packaged as the cement truck, and then basically they show how to transform him, how to arm him with all his weapons, how to put on the stickers, and how to read the tech spec thing down here. And so we get down to his tech specs. It has a picture of Mixmaster, which matches the one here on the front of the card. It's done up in purple to signify he's a Decepticon. It says Constructicon above him. It gives his name as Mixmaster, and his function is materials fabrication. And there's a quote associated with him. It says, "How strong the steel, how quick the conquest. Nothing is safe from him. Will use anything from unliving rock to living robot in making new materials. Uses acids and bonding agents to reduce and recombine almost anything inside mixing drum. A chemistry lab on wheels. As left leg module combines with fellow Constructicons to form giant robot Devastator." So all in all, this kind of points out that Mixmaster is a bit of a crazed lunatic, since he's even willing to throw living beings into his mixing drum to turn them into whatever sort of chemical or material the Decepticons need at that moment. Scary thought. And then we move on here to his tech spec grid. Normally you would need a decoder to read it, but I'm capable of reading it without it. It gives his strength as 7, his intelligence is 6, his speed is 3, his endurance is 7, his rank is 3, his courage is 6, his firepower is 7, and his skill is 9, so despite being a little small on some of these, he is very good at his job. So we get down to my thoughts. Mixmaster has always been a favorite of mine, especially since, like I stated earlier, he was my first Constructicon, so I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for him. The toy, it was simple and basic, I'll give it that. But many of the ones that were used for the combiners at that time were very simple and very basic. But I still like the fact that he has a unique function and is kind of an oddball within the group. He's not as interested in the conquest or whatever. He's out to help the cause in whatever way he can. So he loves getting told by Megatron of some new chemical agent or material they need, because he apparently has been known to laugh about hearing about it and then sets off to find something to make it. So if the Decepticons had a mad scientist, I think Mixmaster fits the bill. Supposedly he should be getting his toy in the coming months, and when I get it, I'm definitely going to compare the modern one to this vintage one. I definitely want to know how well it stacks up. At any rate, that's my review of the Generation 1 and Generation 2 versions of Mixmaster. I hope you all enjoyed it. Please do remember that if you love the content we feature on this channel, Larry and I would certainly appreciate a like, share, comment, and subscribe. This is Sparkster1701 saying I will catch you all later.